Hey Divination, thank you for joining us in this live stream. Today we're going to show you how to automatically scroll horizontally when you're actually scrolling vertically with Divi. So if you're not an Elegant Themes member yet, make sure that you check out Divi. I've mentioned it in one of the links in the description below. And without any further ado, let's get to it. All right, so let's start off by taking a quick look at the outcome that we'll create throughout this tutorial. So over here, I have this design going on, which we'll recreate from scratch using Divi. Now, if I scroll down and I keep scrolling vertically, this goes sideways. So it scrolls horizontally, and this is where it ends, and then it goes back to normal vertical scrolling. So this is a little bit more advanced. We're using different things to achieve this outcome, and it's just really effortless. It really helps you create kind of, slider mechanisms where, your content doesn't go to waste because it automatically scrolls horizontally. So let's take a quick look on smaller screen sizes as well. So we have a similar, if not the same outcome there. And yeah, so this is fully responsive, and we're using a couple of things to achieve this. Also, I want to say hi to everyone on YouTube and on Facebook. Glad to see you guys are joining in. If you guys have any questions, make sure to leave a comment, and I'll be checking on those quite frequently, so I can keep you guys in the loop. So all right, let's take a quick look at what we're using within this live stream. So to achieve this kind of horizontal scrolling when you're actually scrolling vertically. So obviously we're using Divi, then we're also using GSAP, which is a JavaScript library. Very good library. We're also using Scroll Trigger, which is a plugin for GSAP. And Scroll Trigger and GSAP come with quite some demos that allow you to do different things that you couldn't do like out of the box. So you can definitely notice by the way that the user experience is here. You can notice that some extra JavaScript code has been involved to, kind of manipulate the way you behave on a certain website. And this wouldn't be possible without any JavaScript. So this automatic scrolling, when you're actually, you're taking a kind of scroll direction and you're changing it. So that's something you can do with JavaScript only. And you also have this kind of transition effect. Like if I go to the bottom of, this horizontal slider, if I can call it that, it automatically goes back to normal vertical scrolling. So this is definitely something that you can also only achieve with JavaScript. So we're using GSAP for that scroll trigger, and also a scroll trigger demo. If I open this over here and show you guys, this is the demo that we're using, but obviously this is based on just pure HTML and CSS. It works kind of different in Divi, so you kind of have to know how Divi is structured to be able to pull this off. So that's exactly what we're going to do within this tutorial. We're combining the best of two worlds. We're using Divi to build our entire HTML and CSS structure, design the entire thing, and then we're using the JavaScript libraries to add the functionality. So this kind of scrolling effect only is enabled on certain sections. So this means that you could easily add this anywhere inside your page, and it doesn't have to involve all of your sections. You can decide which sections you want to include in this horizontal scrolling, which really helps you add that diversity to your page design. So all right, let's get into it. Over here I have another page where I'm going to start building from scratch. So I'll go ahead and create a new page or open an existing one and enable the visual builder at the top. And we're going to start building from scratch. Now, you can notice that when I go back to the preview, I have a bit of space at the top and at the bottom, and this purely for allowing the result to fall into place and show you guys what you can expect from the outcome if you're using it inside a different page. So to be able to pull that off within this tutorial as well, we're going to use some placeholder sections, so at the top and the bottom. So I'm first going to start by creating those placeholder sections. I already have a section here, so I'm just going to open the section settings, go to the sizing settings, and I'm just going to assign a height of 60 VH, which means viewport height. And I'm going to clone this once, so I have one at the top and the bottom, and now I can add a section in between those two. So I'm first going to start recreating the design over here, and then we're going to use this section for the other ones. So we only have to design it once and then we can reuse it. So I'm just going to select regular section here, And I'm going to open the section settings, go to the sizing settings and assign a max height of 100 VH. And this will just make sure that this section design doesn't exceed the height of my browser, so no content will get lost. I'm also going to use 10 VH for the top and bottom padding in the spacing settings just to add a bit of spacing. And in the visibility settings, I'm going to put the vertical overflow to auto. So this, in combination with the max height of 100 VH, will make sure that if something, the design within your section, if it surpasses a viewport height of 100 VH, then a scroll bar will appear so none of your content gets lost. Especially considering the fact that you're creating this kind of horizontal scrolling effect where there's no vertical scrolling at that point. You need to make sure that your content doesn't go to waste on certain screen sizes, or depending on what kind of viewport people are looking at it. All right, so now we can add a new row. We're using a row with one column. And I'm just going to quickly take a look to see if there are any questions up until now. I don't see any questions, but people are following along. So if you guys have questions, make sure to leave a comment. I'll be checking on those. All right, so I'm using a row with one column, and without adding modules yet, I'm going to open the row settings and I'm going to use a background image here. Let me just grab that same background image. Using cover and center for the background image position there. So I'm not changing anything. Then I'll go to the sizing settings and I'm going to enable use custom gutter width and select a value of 1. And I'm going to use responsive width values. So that's going to be 70% on desktop. So these are just, design related changes. So once we create our design and reuse it, we can focus on creating the horizontal scrolling when you're actually scrolling vertically. But yeah, to be able to show you guys how to get there, I have to have a design in place first. So yeah. Then I'm going to go to the spacing settings. I'm going to use some responsive padding values here as well. I'm going to use 30 VH for the top padding on desktop, and I'm going to bring that down to 20 VH on tablet and phone. And I'm going to use 0 pixels for all screen sizes at the bottom there. Then I'm going to open the column settings. I'm going to use a white background color here for my column. And I'm going to apply some custom padding values, so 5% for the top and bottom and 5% for the left and the right side. Also going to use a border of 1 pixel here, and it's going to be a black border. All right. And I'm just going to go back to the sizing settings of my row and make sure that the max width is set to 100%. So we're using VW as our unit to create this kind of responsive outcome, which means that we need a row that takes up the entire width of our screen and just goes to 70% of whatever kind of screen size. There's no max width. The max width is 100%. So yeah, this is what we have up until now. And now we can start adding some modules. So I'm going to start with the first module, and I'm going to add some H3 content. Then I'll go to it's actually H4 content that I'm adding, and I'm going to change the H4 text settings. So we're using Source Code Pro, a black text color. We're using different responsive values for the text size, 1.2 VW on desktop, 2.5 VW on tablet, and 3 VW on phone, and also 1 pixel for the letter spacing there. So let me add another text module right below this one. So this should be really quick. I'm just going to add some content here so you guys can see everything and watch it all fall into place. actually using some H3 content here, which is going to be, you know, the main title there. I'm going to add the H3 text settings to the design tab to style this as well. So if you love this design and you want to recreate it, you can follow these steps. Or you can also download the JSON file, which you can find in the blog post mentioned directly in the description below. So these are the settings we're going for the H3. And then I'm going to add one more text module here with some description content. Let me grab that. And then I'll go to the text settings of that. And these are the text settings we're using. So source code pro again. Let me grab the text size values, which are 0.8 VW on desktop, 2 VW on tablet, and 3 VW on phone, and 1.45 EM for the text line height. I'm also going to modify the sizing settings here a little bit. So we're using some responsive width values. Let me just enable responsive options here. 67% on desktop, and we'll bring that back to 100% on tablet and phone. And then we'll go to the spacing settings here. I'm just going to add a little bit of responsive margin, 3 VH for top and bottom margin on desktop. And these values are going to be 5 VH on tablet and phone. So just a little bit more, since we have that kind of portrait mode on smaller screen sizes. And the last module we need here to finish our design, and then we can focus on the functionality, is adding a button. So let me just grab the button settings real quick. These are the button settings we're using for this particular design. So 0.8 VW on desktop for the button text size, 2 VW on tablet, and 3 VW on phone, a white text color, a black background color, 0 pixels for the border width, 0 border radius, source code pro for the button font, uppercase for the button font style again. I'm also going to add a bit of spacing to this button to give it a nice shape. It's just going to be 15 pixels for top and bottom and 50 pixels for left and right. And we're also going to reposition it in the advanced tab. So we're going to select absolute here and bottom left corner. I'm just going to use some offset here, minus 5% for the vertical offset and 5% for the horizontal offset. So this is our design that we're going to use for this functionality. So now that we have this once, we can reuse it as many times as we want. We're just going to clone this twice. And at this point, these are going to show up below each other. And of course, you will need to modify all of the duplicate content. I'm not going to do that within this live stream, but you know what to do. You know, have to change the row background and all of the content and so forth and so on. But now we can focus on the functionality of achieving this effect where we scroll vertically, but the design scrolls horizontally across all screen sizes, and we get this effortless effect. So the first step to accomplishing that is using a CSS class for each section that you want to include within this scrolling process. So in this case, that means 1, 2, 3. We have 3 sections that we want to include. So I'm going to open each one of these sections and I'm going to assign the CSS class to them. So this CSS class will just help us identify which sections we want to be wrapped around another div. So that main div, that's going to be the parent of all of these sections, will help us create that scrolling effect. So I'm going to add horizontal section to each one of these. So very important, if you want something to be included within it, you will need to modify the CSS class and add a horizontal section there. Let me just see really quick if I have anything. Okay, just double checking really quick to see if there's any space before the CSS class. So the CSS class, you can obviously see it, but it's just called horizontal section, horizontal dash section. And now we're going to add a new code module somewhere inside our page. Doesn't really matter where. I'm just going to switch over to wireframe mode here in the bottom left corner, and I'm going to add a code module to this first section here that we've created for our design. Now, the first thing we will need to do here within our code module is include the libraries that we're going to use. So as mentioned before, we're going to use GSAP and scroll trigger for GSAP. So the scroll trigger plugin is quite recent, I think. It's an add-on for GSAP where you can, trigger certain actions when you get to a certain point. So it's kind of like scroll effects within Divi, but you just get a lot more freedom in what you can do. Like you can basically do anything you want once you reach a certain design element. All right, and next we're going to add some new script tags, and these script tags are going to include the code that we're going to use. So first of all, we're going to open jQuery here. So open our code with some document ready function and jQuery indication there. We're also going to register the scroll trigger plugin by adding this line, and you can find everything like all of the code and stuff in the blog post, which is mentioned immediately in the description below. But you can also download the layout JSON file where you can just, upload it to your Divi library and get right into using it and just, experiment a little bit. Or you can follow along and read it off the screen, which sounds like the least convenient option though. So, okay, let's move on to the next part. Now, as I've mentioned before, the reason why we need to add a CSS class to each one of the sections we want to include is because we're going to wrap it around a new div, so a parent div that contains all of these sections. So usually when you're inside the Divi builder, the highest div there is, so the highest parent there is a section. Now we're going to exceed that for this functionality, and we're going to add something that's even higher than a section, so a parent to certain sections, and that one's going to be called horizontal containers. So these are the two lines that we're going to need. We're identifying these sections that we've marked for the horizontal scrolling, and we're going to wrap it around a new div which is called horizontal containers. So the horizontal sections are part of the horizontal container. And then we're gonna add the code that we need to make this work. So let me just copy that really quick. GSAP and scroll trigger have quite some documentation to them, and you can find a lot of documentation on their websites. They're also linked in the blog post, which you can find in the description below. But it's also like, although it's JavaScript and it's coding all algorithms and all of that, it's very structured and it's very easy to use. If you dive into the documentation, I'm not going to do that within this tutorial because that would take a long time for me to explain the basics of JavaScript, first of all, and GSAP, which they have plenty documentation on. But this is basically the code that is used so if I highlight this, to create that fake horizontal scrolling, if you will. So if I scroll vertically, it scrolls horizontally instead. And you can notice that some things are very important here is the fact that we're using the horizontal container as our trigger. Here in the end, we're also using that same CSS class. So we're indicating what we're triggering this effect on. And this code is based on the demo that they have shared alongside the scroll trigger plugin, which is this. So this is slightly modified. We're also going to add a little bit of CSS class to make that work within Divi. So let me grab the CSS code too. And obviously we're going to need to add new style tags here to include that CSS code. So let's go, I'm going to open the style tags, and I'm going to add this CSS code here. So horizontal container width 300%. I think it's very important for you guys to know that this width 300% equals the number of sections that are included within this mechanism, if you will. So this 300% means that we have 3 sections within this horizontal scrolling. Each will most likely have 100%. So 3 times 100% equals 300%. If you're going for more sections, you will need to up this value accordingly. We're also making sure that the page container overflows are set to hidden. The reason to that is because, we don't want a horizontal scroll bar to appear on our page. We just want it to happen, but we don't want people to see that the actual x-axis of our page has been increased a lot. And we're also making sure that the horizontal sections have a width of 100%, and this will change. Transform is also necessary for this to work. All right, so now I'm just gonna save it and exit the visual builder. So basically that's it to achieve it. And you can, I've split this tutorial up in 2 parts. So the first part was obviously designing the thing. Designing whatever you want to include within your sections, and I've reused it, but you can use any kind of different sections within this horizontal scrolling mechanism. But that's the first part, you designing what you want to include within the horizontal scrolling. And then the second part is focusing on functionality. So knowing that each one of these sections that you want to include will need an extra CSS class, and then adding the libraries that are needed to create this kind of JavaScript effect. And adding the code that's needed for that alongside the CSS code. So that's the reason why I've split this up into 2 parts. You can first or last focus on design and then on functionality. So knowing this, you can create any kind of design and have this horizontal scrolling effect apply to it. So let me just exit the visual builder here. And there we go. Effortless and very browser friendly. GSAP and scroll trigger have a pretty good reputation in the development space, as far as I've noticed. So they're definitely worth looking into. I'm going to do a few more of these kind of tutorials where people that want to, use Divi and all of the perks that Divi comes with. And Divi is very advanced in itself, has a lot of animation possibilities, as in like scroll effects, sticky effects, a lot of efficiency features, and just helps you visually build beautiful websites. But you can really get the best out of Divi and create like advanced type of website if you know how to use certain awesome libraries as well. So I really love GSAP and scroll triggers, so I definitely recommend you go into it, learn a little bit more about it if you're into that stuff, if you want to up your web design skills, web development skills. So I'm just going to see if there are any questions, because for me that's about it. That's the tutorial. Don't see any questions. People are following along, but I hope you guys I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, and I hope to see you in the next one.